All right, so for years, right, the whole Jeffrey Epstein story has been this dark cloud of whispers and conspiracy theories. But now, it looks like the floodgates have just burst wide open. And when I say floodgates, I mean it. We're talking about a staggering 3.5 million pages of documents, photos, and videos, all tied to Epstein and his network. This is the stuff that's been locked away, sealed, until now. So that leads us to the big question, doesn't it? After all this time, all the speculation, what do these documents actually tell us? Are we finally getting the answers we've all been waiting for? Or are we just tumbling down an even deeper rabbit hole? Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, a quick recap on Epstein himself. Then we'll dive into the big one, the names, the nations, the networks. After that, we'll look at the whole political drama behind getting these files released, and we'll wrap up with the lingering mysteries that, honestly, might be the biggest part of the story. All right, let's jump in. Before we get to the juicy stuff in the files, we've got to set the stage. Who exactly was Jeffrey Epstein and what was his game? Well, you see this term, influence peddler. That's the key to the whole thing. See, Epstein wasn't just collecting friends or money. He was collecting leverage. It was his superpower. He'd create these situations, these environments where powerful people could let their guard down, and in doing so, he gained control. That leverage, whether it was about money, secrets, or something darker, that was his real currency. In his public story, it's pretty stark when you lay it out. He builds this massive network in the 90s. But then, fast forward to 2008, and he's a convicted sex offender. Now, this is so important. Anyone who hung out with him after that point, they knew who they were dealing with. There was no pretending. And of course, it all comes to a head in 2019 with his final arrest, which was supposed to be the big trial, but instead, it just ended with his death in that jail cell. Okay, so with that context, let's dive into the files themselves, because the network they lay out, it's absolutely massive. I mean, look at this. The names are just a who's who of global power. You've got politics, big tech, finance, even royalty. And look, let's be clear. Just because a name is in the files doesn't automatically mean guilt. But what it does show is the insane level of access this guy had, even after he was a known convicted sex offender. That's the part that's so wild. And this is where it gets really interesting. The files are full of these contradictions. Take Elon Musk. Publicly, he's like, Epstein tried to get me to go to his island, and I said no. Pretty clear, right? But then you look at a private email in the files, and it's him asking Epstein, when should we head to your island on the 2nd? That gap between the public story and the private reality, you see that again and again. And some of this stuff is just, it's deeply disturbing. I mean, look at this quote from an email sent to Epstein. It's just chilling. But here's what's maybe even more disturbing. Look at the sender. It's completely blacked out, redacted. We have no idea who sent this. The government is actively hiding the identity of the person who wrote these words. This one says so much about how Epstein operated. Someone asks him if he has any pull with the president of Syria, of all people. And his reply, not for email. Now think about that. Given the absolutely insane things he was willing to put in an email, what on earth was happening in the conversations that were too sensitive even for him to type out? It just makes your mind race. So when you pull back, you see this wasn't just an American thing. It was a global spider web. You've got threads connecting to US politics and tech, sure, but also Israeli intelligence, folks with Kremlin ties, British royalty, European leaders, you name it. Epstein wasn't just a guy in the network. He was like a central hub, connecting all these different worlds of power. Okay, now let's shift gears a bit. Because the story of how we even got these files, well, that's a political drama all on its own, and it's almost as revealing as what's actually in them. You have to remember, for years we heard promises, big promises. Figures like Kash Patel were out there saying, I've been calling for all of it to be released. We have to find out who was involved. The message was loud and clear. Just put us in charge and we'll give you total transparency. The truth will finally come out. But then the story completely flips. Once they're in office, everything changes. In February, the Attorney General is on TV saying the client list is sitting on my desk. A few months later, in July, the DOJ puts out a memo saying, we found no evidence to investigate anyone else, and they weren't going to release any more files. I mean, the whiplash was so intense that Congress actually had to step in and force their hand with a new bill. And get this, it passed 427 to 1. Practically everyone agreed something was fishy. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why the 180? Why go from we'll release everything to actively fighting against it? And that question, my friends, leads us right into the murkiest, most unsettling part of this whole affair. Because for all the names and all the sort of details we did get, maybe the biggest takeaway from the Epstein files is what they don't say. It's the mysteries they deepen, especially when you start looking at the intelligence angle. Seriously, the documents are just littered with these breadcrumbs. You have an FBI source flat out claiming Epstein was working for Mossad. You've got emails talking about setting up meetings with Vladimir Putin. And then there's Epstein's own lawyer filing a request with the CIA for any records they had on him. And what did he get back? The classic "we can neither confirm nor deny" line, which, as you probably know, is spy speak for, yeah, there's something here, but we're not talking about it. And then there's this bombshell. Right there in an FBI interview with a confidential source is this claim that the Trump White House was compromised by Israel and that Jared Kushner was the one actually running the White House. I mean, wow. It paints a picture where Epstein's whole network might have been a tool, a mechanism for foreign influence right at the top of the U.S. government. But here's the frustrating part. After all that, 3.5 million pages, there's no single smoking gun. There's no one document that just lays it all out and solves the mystery. What we have instead is a giant cloud of smoke, billowing in a dozen different directions. It's like the files are more important for the questions they make you ask, not the answers they give. Which brings us right back to those heavy black redaction bars. It's maddening, right? We've seen victims' names just left out there, but the identities of so many powerful people, hidden, concealed. So the question is simple. Who is the government still protecting? And why? And of course, there's the elephant in the room, the question that hangs over this entire saga. What really happened in that jail cell? You know the story, the broken cameras, the guards' mistakes. The official story of suicide has never sat right with a lot of people. And these new files, they give us absolutely nothing new. So where does that leave us? We were promised clarity, we were promised accountability. Instead, what we got feels like a labyrinth of blacked out names, political games, and shadowy intelligence connections that are deeper and weirder than anyone ever thought. So you have to wonder, did this historic document release actually bring us any closer to the truth? Or did it just prove how deep the rabbit hole really goes?